So if you decided to suddenly give up the internet this week on account of it's making you go blind, or perhaps you decided to migrate to a nice new home under a rock somewhere, you might have missed that Samsung just fapped out a fresh trio of Galaxy S25 smartphones. That's right, 3 shiny new blowers, bumping the grand total of phones launched so far in January up to 11. Bloody 11! Enough to form an entire Premier League football team. Although not even smartphone AI has quite figured out the subtle art of falling over a bit and rolling around blubbing like you've just been kneecapped with a f***ing machete. But yes, we're now just shy of a dozen new phones already launched in 2025. And all this proper grind, pulling shiny rectangles out of boxes and pretending I actually care, is starting to give me alopecia. Not that you can really tell, of course. Now, Samsung Unpacked was a very straightforward, conventional affair, no shocking twists, etc. Just the usual S25, S25 Plus, and S25 Ultra shaped shenanigans. That is until the absolute arse end of it when Samsung teased something called the Galaxy S25 Edge, which up until now has been whispered about online, but under a very different name. And that's the supremely leaky Galaxy S25 Slim, which has popped up in a veritable platter of online rumour pieces recently. So what do we actually know about the Galaxy S25 Edge, previously known as the S25 Slim, and when the ruddy heck are we actually going to see it properly launch? Let's do a jingle and have a bit of a look.
Techspert Weekly!
So web chat around a mysterious all-new Samsung handset first appeared about Halloween time last year, and from the IMEI database entry it appears to be a fresh S25 phone with a model number bang in between the S25 Plus and the S25 Ultra. Well, various online leaky blokes began referring to this surprise blower as the Galaxy S25 Slim, including OnLeaks and SmartPre, who shared these renders and revealed that the Slim would be just 6.4 mils thick, if you don't count the pokey out camera bits, of course. And that's almost a millimeter thinner than the Galaxy S25 and the S25 Plus. And despite being about as chunky as the average cheese slice, the Galaxy S25 Slim will still apparently boast a spacious 6.7-inch display, just like the S25 Plus. Of course, these renders show off the usual Samsung triple lens setup, whereas the Galaxy S25 Edge that Sammy teased yesterday quite clearly has just 2 of the buggers. I mean, I'm proper thick and also half cut, and even I can bloody see that. So it looks like the S25 Edge will probably scrap the telephoto shooter to keep the slender finish, but it could make up for this by upgrading the main sensor. Some leakers reckon the 50meg primary shooter will be upgraded to the same 200meg sensor found slapped on the S25 Ultra, which could then be used to capture high-resolution shots which you can then crop into as a sort of zoom effect. Alright, so an even slimmer Galaxy S25 Plus, but with upgraded camera tech. So far, I'd say I'm about 60% moist. We're talking a camping trip in Dorset in November type conditions. But can we expect any other upgrades? Well, so far these smart-arse internet seers seem undecided on one key factor, and that's the battery size. The S25 Plus sports a 4900 mAh cell as usual, but Sammy may have gone full silicon carbon for the S25 Edge, which boasts a greater energy density than old-school lithium batteries. So a thinner battery could still offer a bigger capacity overall. There's been loads of internet chatter about when is Samsung going to swap to silicon carbon for its battery tech, especially as it's more environmentally friendly, and obviously Samsung is a friend of the fish and nature in general. So perhaps they're finally getting their act together for the Galaxy S25 Slim, and this is them kind of dipping their oar in the pool, so to speak. And frankly, it's very much needed if Sammy doesn't want to end up trailing behind rivals like Xiaomi and Oppo, who are already cramming massive bloody 6000 mAh battery bastards into their phones. No shocks on the performance front, as the Galaxy S25 Edge should be powered by the same Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset as its S-series siblings, although the more slender frame will inevitably mean less room for coolant tech. So here's hoping that the S25 Edge doesn't get hotter than the insides of a freshly microwaved Ginster's steak slice. So far, certainly in all of my testing of Snapdragon 8 Elite smartphones, none of them have overheated to even a slightly troubling degree, although most of them have boasted some pretty decent cooling tech in one shape or another. As for the rest of the S25 Edge tech, well, don't expect many shocks. That display will almost certainly be another 6.7-inch Dynamic AMOLED 2X panel with Quad HD Plus resolution, same as the S25 Plus, and hopefully backed by the same beefy stereo speakers, if there's room for those, in the slender body. And meanwhile, that software will be unchanged, a bit of One UI 7, so densely packed with AI shindiggery that it is positively gushing from every imaginable orifice. Much like myself, around 6 hours after that Ginster's steak slice. But when can we actually see the S25 Edge properly spaffed out? Well, the online word is that it'll likely be revealed around April-May time. So not too much longer to wait, and if you are seriously considering spunking out loads of cash on that Galaxy S25 Plus, it may possibly be worth hanging on a wee bit longer. But what do you reckon? The question is, does the S in S25 Slim stand for sign me up, or does it stand for soggy sack of salamander semen? Do salamanders even have semen? Yeah, they're reptiles, right? So they do it and then chuff out eggs. See, this is why I really need Davey Attenborough on speed dial. What I'm trying to say is, are you interested in the Galaxy S25 Slim? Yes or no? Definitely let us know down in the comments below. And if you're David Attenborough, let us know how salamanders down there too, please. And now, oh yes, it's time for the part of the show that's almost as baffling as salamander reproduction. It's viewer comments.
Viewer comments.
Oh.
So let's start this week with Kitsune Cognition Corner, bit of a tongue twister that one, who says, he looks like Squidward. I mean, fair enough, I'm bald, I'm a bit squinty, and I'm surprisingly slimy too. Although thankfully I do not have a nose like a droopy cock, although, you know, just give it time. Questionable 8783 says, may all your shits in 2025 be as smooth as your head. Well, thank you very much, buddy, that's very kind, and I very much hope so too, because my arse is in an absolute state these days, can't really handle much more trauma. My youthful debauchery of far too many vindaloos and spicy meat feast pizzas have just absolutely wrecked the thing. Grebo and Gasport says, finally normal Friday service has resumed. I had to resort to watching even more dull YouTubers during my Friday lunch break. As in even more dull YouTubers or even duller YouTubers. Either way, you have my commiserations, and yes, normal service very much has resumed until the next week where I decide to piss off abroad or just can't be arsed. David Ashmore says, hi Chris, with the sad passing of David Lynch, was he someone whose films you enjoyed watching? Yeah, I mean, my first introduction to David Lynch was Blue Velvet, of course, absolute classic, which I first watched when I was, I think, about 10 years old. So perhaps unsurprisingly left quite an impression on my tiny wee mind. Even though I'd say I had absolutely no idea what was going on for probably about 90% of that film. The same goes for, you know, Lost Highway and Mulholland Drive, all those absolute classics. I actually watched those at a far more suitable age. I think I was sort of mid-20s or whatever when I finally got around to watching them. And I'd still say I really enjoyed them, but I did spend the majority of the running time sat there with an expression on my face like James Corden had just walked in the room and then let off an explosive fart. Just like, I really liked, what's the one with the crazy hair, one of his earliest films. Oh. Don't ever get all kiddies, it f***ing sucks. Eraserhead, absolute banger of a film. I can't really remember much about it now because it was absolutely tanked when I watched it, but I remember I enjoyed it very much. But I think like probably most people, I didn't really properly get into David Lynch until I first watched Twin Peaks, which of course is one of my all-time favourite. Absolute classic telly, great stuff. And I really do need to sit down and rewatch Twin Peaks The Return at some point as well, because I've only seen it the once, and again, for about 80% of the running time or something, absolutely no idea what was happening in front of my face. But yes, R.I.P. Dave, you are the best kind of absolute f***ing mentalist. And on the subject of the Galaxy S25 smartphones and various upcoming smartphone launches, of which there are many, spoiler alert, John Bukaku says, I hope that Samsung tanks this year. Time for a wake-up call that they can't be giving us the same cameras and tech every year with increased prices. And at least thankfully they didn't jack the prices right up for the S25 series, but certainly agree, like especially with all the Chinese manufacturers and what they're spaffing out at the moment, some of the innovations we're seeing, especially in like the foldable areas and stuff like that. Samsung kind of needs to get its skates on a bit so it's not left behind. And next up, Yeeties and Wheaties says it's 2025, no 1-inch sensor equals no deal. Fair play. Poke Brawl says, kinda sad not to see the Oppo Find X8 Ultra or the Vivo X200 Ultra in the best phones coming soon roundup from last week. I guess they won't go global. Well, if you happen to point your internet browser at the Vivo UK website right now, you will basically get a sorry we f***ed off out of it type message. So yeah, as usual, if you want a bit of X200 action, you will have to import that mofo. And yes, unfortunately, Oppo itself has confirmed that the Find X8 Ultra will be China only. It's not going global, which isn't just a big shame, it's a shame the size of King Kong's moaning shit. Ryan IGI says, remember back like 5 years ago when only phones under 200 quids like the Moto G9 Power and the Poco M3 could get to 6,000 mAh batteries and they were considered absolutely enormous. I've just reminded myself of the G9 Power's specs. Apparently it was 6.8 inches and 220 grams, which at the time I believe I said was absolutely bloody ridiculous. You might as well stash a concrete breeze block in your pants. And now, of course, it's pretty much par for the course for these ultra flagship phones, which now finally are getting their 6,000 mAh-ish battery. So yeah, Motorola well ahead of its time. Ricky Harvey says, have you got any upcoming reviews of any more clip-on type earbuds? None at all, I'm afraid, and you can blame the sheer volume of smartphones that are launching right now for the lack of any audio-visual type shenanigans that I'm doing. It's a proper full-on phone bukkake at the moment. In Pursuit of Happiness says, will the OnePlus 7 and 7T Pro design ever make its way back? The full screen display is so addictive. Yeah, the old pop-up selfie cameras, they were absolutely freaking hilarious. Used to love that design, and Oppo and a few other manufacturers jumped on that bandwagon very briefly as well, but I think those days are done, sadly. It's a shame we haven't seen more smartphones with under-display selfie cameras that you see on the likes of the Red Magic smartphones, the ZTEs, etc. And yes, they do mean that your selfie photos are generally a bit fuzzy and hazy and stuff, which in my case is an absolute f***ing bonus. Plunder1956 says, I suggest, Chris, that you buy yourself Craghopper's Kiwi trousers. The leg pocket can easily accommodate 2 of even the biggest phones around, or a small tablet, leaving 6 other pockets for booze, earbuds and vital daily supplies. I mean, booze, that is my vital daily supply. But I'll tell you what though, I'm absolutely looking into those because yeah, you don't need to be Mystic Bloody Meg to realise I've got many smartphones lurking in my future. Bambino says, Uncle Spurt, can you say skibbity? I can, and I just did. You're very welcome. I've still got no idea what this skibbity shenanigans is all about. I know it involves a toilet head thing. That's about it. I get the feeling I have to have like an entire sack full of angel dust to even begin to understand it. Sam Wood says, my God, why does he have to swear every 5 minutes? Not good, bud, blimey, not good, bud, a real put-off. Every 5 minutes. That would mean that I only swear about 3 times on average in these videos, which would practically make me a f***ing Boy Scout. But don't worry, buddy, if, you know, naughty language offends your sensitive, precious wee ears, there's plenty of generic YouTube twats like me who don't swear. You know, feel free to f*** off and watch MKBHD instead. You know, he might do 100 mph in school zones, but he doesn't say things like twat. Real Trigo 2 says, I love many of the anime wallpapers you have on the phones you showcase. Where do you get them from? You know what? I don't believe we've had this jingle in quite some time. Wall.alphacoders.com, wall.alphacoders.com. That's where my wallpapers come from. Wall.alphacoders.com. And I gotta go because I've got a bloody briefing I've got to bugger off for, but last comment before I do sod right off out of it. Pervy says, why is this grandpa playing anime games? I'm not Grandpa Spurt, you cheeky wee whippersnapper. I'm Uncle motherfucking Spurt. Don't you forget it. I just happen to look really, really old because of all the whiskey and internet grot. Now, let's be a warning, kiddies, too much booze and web smut and you'll end up looking like this. Anyway, I think that's enough viewer comments for 2025 to be perfectly frank, but certainly for this week. A massive thank you, as always, to everyone who commented last week. Please do tappity tap your comments down in the comment section down below, and next week I'll try and smash my way through as many of those as possible. And speaking of next week,
Next week, what the f is next week?
well, butter my bollocks and call me a crumpet. I think there's actually not a single smartphone launch scheduled for next week, at least none that I've been bloody invited to. But of course, your Uncle Spur isn't just going to sit around in his pants watching hentai and getting blasted on single malt. Well, I am going to be doing that actually, but I'm also mostly going to be shooting lots and lots of videos on all that Galaxy S25 shiz. So definitely, please do poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell so you don't miss out on all that excitement, thrills, etc, etc. A massive thank you for sitting through this shower of arse right to the bitter end. Make sure you have yourselves a absolutely ruddy fantastic weekend. Cheers everybody, love you!